Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 7 of CANNAfact Friday. We have a very special show lined up for you today. And for anybody who's wondering what the heck is CANNAfact Friday, well, I will tell you what it's all about. Every week, right here on LinkedIn Live, we do a live broadcast at 10 a.m. where we share some stats, some data, some interesting facts that we picked up throughout the week. And often we bring on a special guest to help us make sense of what it all means, provide some context, and have some fun conversations. And most of all, bring some Friday vibes to you. My name is Adriana, and I am the VP of Strategy at ISA, which is an insights firm based in Los Angeles, California. Back in my home in LA, off the road this week, thank goodness. And I'm joined by my co-host, David Palaschuk, who is the best-selling author of Branding Bud, the first book about branding for cannabis. Welcome, David.
Hey, Adriana, how are you today?
Doing well, thanks. Glad to be back in LA and not in the blustering cold.
Yes, indeed. In warm LA. I'm here in rainy Seattle. I'm looking forward to the sun coming out. They said it was coming out this week, but we'll see. I'm excited to be here on today's 7th episode of CANNAfact Friday. It's pretty exciting.
Lucky number 7.
That's right. And we've got an amazing guest for us today. But before we talk about our guest, I just want to call out what we do every Friday. So this is our 7th episode of basically taking data that we find during the week that's of interest to us or that shows us something moving in the industry or evolving, and we take that data, we talk through it with an industry expert, and we try to contextualize that. Because God knows there's so many data points out there that if only taken alone,
Exactly.
very confusing and misleading. So we're trying to look for some truthiness on this CANNAfact Friday as we dig into some data and stories around it to support it. So that's we're really interested to introduce our guests. But before we do, not only do we want to hear from our guests, we want to hear from our audience and our listeners as well. So if anybody has any questions along the way, there's a text box off to the side. Please feel free to ask us any questions, and we'll do our best to answer those questions and to get to them. Sometimes we get a lot, and we just try to keep up. So bear with us if we don't get to your questions. We'll do our best here. So with that,
and feel free to just say hi too.
That's right. And hello, Michael Marlowe. We see you there. Or yo, that works too. So that said, we would like to introduce our guest today. I am very excited to introduce Larry Perigo. Larry is not only a friend and a good friend, but hello, Larry. How are you?
Hello.
Welcome, morning, Larry.
Hi, Adriana. Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So you know what I do with my dear friends is I read their bios and their intros. Otherwise, I'll be telling people stories about Crazy Larry and all the fun things we've done. So with that, let me just jump in. This week's guest is Larry Perigo, the founder of Saints Joints, a Seattle-based cannabis pre-roll company known for its collectible packaging and connection to the art communities and music world. Saints Joints has been called out as a top 10 pre-roll by Weed Maps, a top 100 cannabis company by Green Entrepreneur, among other notable callouts. Larry's taken Saints Joints to California and back, and to Oklahoma and Washington, and is on his way to building a national cannabis brand and doing it in ways that are unique and exciting, which we'll talk about. So we're excited to chat with Larry about his brand and talk over some stats, talk about some evolving and changing things relative to pre-rolls, certainly since the pandemic and beyond, if we're beyond it. And we're excited to have you, Larry. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Before we throw up our first stat, just a quick little note on what we're covering today. We're focusing on flower, but not just on flower, specifically on people who smoke flower. So quick disclaimer, this is a judgment-free zone. There are a lot of anti-smoking messages we hear sometimes, particularly because we're all exposed to those anti-tobacco messages. But as we're talking about what makes the smoking community unique, we're here to satisfy our curiosity, not to demonize. So we're just talking about how people stack up, and we just want to learn about what makes this segment unique. So let's dive into it.
And that's funny, Adriana, when my mother always says, no judgment here. I know it's coming. But we're excited, and smoking and flower are a big part of the industry, and we're here to learn more about it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So first, we're going to kick it off with a few stats about the overall general. These are all cannabis consumers. We were just sort of curious to tee up, right? What happened in 2020? Like, we're here going into our third year of the pandemic. We know that there were some extremely dramatic behavioral shifts that happened. We're still to this day trying to untangle what's here to stay, what's changing, what's part of the new normal, what's part of our old routines. So I think it makes sense, since we're going to be talking about pre-rolls in a minute, to give some context on what really happened in 2020. And there were some huge shifts, right? So I'm just going to call out a few of them, but you can see that there were a ton of big changes among cannabis consumers overall. So we see the first one I'm going to call out is the time of day that people say. 35% said they made a change to the time of day that they consume cannabis, right? And this makes sense when you think about it in the context of people are working from home. They're not necessarily under the watchful eye of their coworkers or their bosses. So there's more of an opportunity there. And this also is backed up by other studies that we've done that say generally people are a little bit more stressed out. They might be consuming a little bit more, but that they expect to go back to normal, quote unquote, normal habits when this is all over, which we have yet to see that day. Another thing I want to call out is the 44% who changed the method of how they obtain cannabis. And right, this is a big change, right? Delivery really came to the forefront. Cannabis delivery was a huge talked about item, and they really kicked it off into high gear out of necessity. And I mean, shout out to those people. They had to redo their whole infrastructure and everything. So a lot of work went into that. And we think it's cool to see people adopt that. So then the last one I'm going to call out before I ask Larry a question is 30% made changes to the accessories that they're using to consume. And this one, I think, is a great lead into our conversation with Larry about pre-rolls. So looking at pre-rolls specifically, and I have a stat from MJ Biz Daily that sales of pre-rolls were up 50% in 2020. And my question for Larry is, now I know that this depends a lot on the person, right? How much you're willing to consume in one session, but generally are pre-rolls meant for one person and to finish in one session? And do you see that as a replacement of the shareable type of consumption methods? Curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when the pandemic started, everybody was talking about joint sales are dropping, and I never really saw a drop. Our joints have always been 0.7, so not a huge joint. They just, they smoke a little bit better that way. And when we chose that size because you smoke a little bit and then you knock the cherry off of it, and then you can just relight it and it tastes good,
Putting some flexibility there.
Yeah.
Just a quick question from Jennifer Holland. Do these stats refer to cannabis users overall or flower specifically? These are overall, Jen. Thanks for your question.
And also, too, a little bit further in, we'll get more specific on flower. But these are overall. Larry, I'm curious. You said that a Saint's joint is 0.7 grams of flower. That said, you and I have had conversations in the past about many of the other competitors, many of the other brands have the 1 gram pre-rolls, and you've always stated that you think a 0.7 gram is better just because it burns cleaner, it has less tar. By the time you smoke it all the way down, there's other things that happen with a bigger, thicker pre-roll than one like yours. But over the course of time, it's interesting. Over the course of the pandemic, people have Well, I think the first thing that happened that I saw were a lot of the 1 gram joints ended up becoming half-gram joints put into the same tube. And I
Yeah.
think that was people counteracting the
Yeah.
the shareability, if you will. What's interesting in your case is you've never sold single joints. You've always sold your pack of 5, correct?
No, we actually have sold single joints, but the joint packs just kind of like outsold them. You know, maybe here and there. Some stores were like sold them great, other ones not. So we kind of eliminated that SKU because we didn't need it for the
Right.
most part.
So you weren't one of the brands that sold a 1 gram joint and then decided during the pandemic to split that into 2 half-gram joints. You were really relying already on your 5-pack, which again is probably is better for the better solution for the issue, because now you could share it with 5 friends instead of
There you go.
right.
Yep.
But it's interesting to see that movement and to see everybody basically, not everybody, but certainly a number of pre-roll companies breaking their 1-grammer down into 2 half-grammers. And then even further, now this trend, now everybody calls them dog walkers, right? So now they're even half-grammers. How has Saints either responded to that, or what do you see that trend as being? Is it a convenience thing? Is it a COVID thing? Is it all of the above?
Well, I think it's like you have to pick your lane or pick your product and roll with that specific product if you get really good at it. I think that making 0.3 gram joints, great idea, but the labor going into closing them, it's like that the labor is worth, it doesn't equal the amount of weed that's even in one of those joints. So that's kind of why we didn't go that way. It's also a lot of carpal tunnel closing all those joints too. But who knows in the future if a joint closer comes along that's really good.
Who knows? That's it's interesting.
Yep.
It's the interesting concept, just in terms of I guess the packaging and labor cost versus the flour that goes into it, and then therefore people saying, why is this dog walker the price it is? Considering the amount of flour that's in.
Right, it's the labor.
Yeah, they're all handmade, and you gotta. Yeah, I think they probably started. They had to cut each cone because they don't even. They had to make their own cones. There's a lot of little things that a customer doesn't, necessarily think about or doesn't need.
Yeah, I had no idea that these were done by hand. I had this vision in my mind that it was done on like an assembly line with like a machine, but you're saying that it's all done by hand, which is interesting to hear.
Yeah, there are a few big machines, but I don't know. I've never seen any that are doing the small dog walkers, but I may be wrong, but those machines are super expensive.
And just to clarify, the pre-rolls are being packed and then closed by hand, right? They're not.
Yeah. Usually a knockbox or some other, joint machine or
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't want to mislead our listeners.
For sure.
And that's such a stunning amount of labor too, when you think that. What was the stat you were sharing with me earlier, David, that half of the pre-rolls sold in Washington State were from Larry's brand, Saints Joints?
Mm-hmm. Larry, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
The not single joint, but multi packs of joints. Yeah. That was a surprise to me.
And that was a headset stat, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a podcast for sure. And that was interesting afternoon. So that was cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Does any so I just wanted to ask if anyone in our listeners has any questions for Larry that we could squeeze in before we move on to the next stat. If not, I'm sure we can come up with something fun to ask him. Oh.
Insults? Nothing?
Roasting, mean tweets, nothing?
So Larry, tell us a little bit about growing the brand. So you started the brand here in Washington State. It's now in Oklahoma. You've entered California, but have found difficulty in the state to basically build out the brand in the way that you would like to. Tell us quickly, what it's like to develop a cannabis pre-roll company or pre-roll brand, and then try to expand that into other states.
It is really hard if you're going to do it all yourself. I had some partners down there that were really great. It's just the California I'm from California. I grew up in Sacramento, California. So I was like, I have tons of connections already. I can totally do this. And it was all the stars were aligning great. And then all of the distributors would quit, and then co-packers would go away. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is getting totally crazy, and then the taxes were just insane. I know they're getting better now. So we'll be back. It was just like, it was taking up so much of my time where I'm like, okay, I need to focus on, less turbulent situations, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you're in Oklahoma as well.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, for the size of the state, has an incredible number of stores, right? Yeah. So how does how do you balance that? For example, I want to say Washington State has about 450 stores, and in California, which is almost 10 times the size of the Washington market, does not have 4,000 stores. If you think of it that way, I think it's considerably less. Yeah. So and then of course the expanse, right, from San Diego to whatever, to Sacramento is just almost
vast state.
Right. Yeah. So would you tell us a little bit, I guess juxtapose, if you would, maybe in Oklahoma or Washington to California in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, well, we started in Washington. Our first legal sale was January 2016. It was always my, dream as a kid to make, a joint box, and going around to the stores and showing them to people. They're like, what is this guy doing? This isn't, and it's, and the packaging was always weird, and I'm like, oh, I know how this is going to work. It'll catch on at some point in time. And slowly, it did, when I started introducing different packaging and cool artists, and, just kind of making it fun for everybody. And then during that time, it was, if you Googled joint boxes, it was like 4 of them on there. And now there's like thousands of them. So, I think that's really interesting with the amount of brands that are out there. Yeah. But that being that early, that really helped us with opportunities like Oklahoma, where that Oklahoma is a licensing deal, and really interesting what they're going through out there. It's still medical, but it seems like everybody's got a medical card, or you can buy whatever you want in the amount, or you can just go to store. And there's so many stores there. And grows, and the entry level there is
right.
Very
barrier to entry is a lot lower, right? It's cheaper.
Totally.
Storefront. You can grow very inexpensively. Power's cheaper, so there's a lot of things working for it in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Larry, if you don't mind, I want to throw a question out for you before we go to the next stat. Yeah. And this is from Jen Holland, who wants to know, what do you think sets your product apart, having such a large piece of the pie in Washington? Do you know why consumers choose your product over others?
I think it's we grow in Washington, we grow about 80% of our product, and we grow really good weed. We've been doing it. I've grown myself for 10 years. So we try to keep it as high quality with the highest inputs we can put in there. And then the packaging is, it's really hard to compete with it. I don't want to sound like that guy, but I'm always like, trying to make it as fun or as interactive or as, always just changing it. And so when you go to the store, it kind of sticks out, and yeah, for sure.
And at the end, we're going to show some images of some really cool, unique packaging concepts. So stay till the end so you can check them out.
And just, quickly, just to jump in there, Larry, if you don't mind, you're very humble in what you say. So I'd like to throw a couple of things out. Larry owned a record label many, many years ago. And one of the things I think he learned from that in our discussions is that, what starts off with this vinyl cover, the album cover, and the artwork that starts there, and the unwrapping, the unboxing, the getting into the vinyl, the listening to it, that's been Larry's approach in terms of how he's worked, these cannabis pre-roll packs. And so what's been really cool, and I think why Saints, and to come back to what Jen just asked, I think what differentiates the Saints joints packaging are a few things. One, Larry's worked with a number of really well-known artists and street artists, skate artists. He's worked with a number of well-known tattoo artists as well. He's really shifted up his boxes. During the election, he had the ballot boxes. One was red, one was blue, so you can actually make a purchase and vote. I've even
QR code on the back. You could scan it so you can register to vote from the joint box.
Right.
Brilliant.
One other thing too, which was really interesting, was I went into a store here in Seattle, Washington, into Dockside Cannabis, and I actually said it would be really cool if let me step back. There were two boxes, and those two boxes were done by two artists, but they worked together to collaborate. So when the boxes came together, it was a bigger, broader picture. And when I went into the cannabis store, they had everything signed up, but it was merged out, but they didn't realize that these boxes came together. So I said, did you know those boxes go together? We put them together. I came back in a couple of weeks later, and they were saying now they were selling the two boxes together in sets because people really love the way they came together. So Larry has just been over the top creative in terms of packaging, and you see it because people come to the shops, they want to collect his boxes, and it's working.
Yeah, and we have a couple comments too from people who are psyched about. Shout out to Saints fam, and also love the voter registration code on the back of joints. Great idea. Agree. All right, y'all. Do you want to go on to the next stat?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, so as promised, we're going to get into smokers specifically and what makes them a little bit different from the rest of the market. I love this question. It's simple, but it reveals so much. And that question is, why do you consume cannabis? So we let people answer multiple different ways. They could select more than one option because, of course, there's multiple benefits, and even different products can fulfill different needs at different times. So this was a multi-select. It doesn't add up to 100%. There were also other options too, and a lot of people wrote in their own answers as well. But what you'll see is that there's a lot of similarities in the top choices between both of the groups. And in a couple areas, there's two little small differences. The smoking community is slightly more likely to say that they are consuming to relax and have fun, and also slightly more likely to say that they are consuming for stress relief purposes. So my question for Larry is, looking at this, does this line up with what you know about your customer base, that they are a fun-loving group that maybe is a little bit stressed out?
100%. I totally agree. I think how the brand attracts a wide variety of just creative people and artists, and and working from home, it's I think it totally lines up for sure.
And I guess in many ways, most people are probably all stressed out and,
Right.
Everybody.
and need to chill. But the thing I come back to is like, there's, how do I say this? There's the benefits of the product, of your product. You know, the flower is high quality. You know, it's not shake. It's all those things that it's supposed to be. But again, there's this community component, which I think is really interesting, above and beyond the benefits. Larry, how do you? I mean, I know you're super creative. I know you've got idea after idea after idea, you know, to evolve your products and your packaging. But how do you connect on the social level and from the community perspective? Because I think that's something that you do that few brands actually do. You know, is connect and connect in a way that's meaningful. And I think the fact that your packaging has become collectible is also part of that. But you know, do you focus on that, or does that just, you know, is that more organic and that comes because you're just on the pulse of what your consumer wants?
Yeah, I think it definitely a lot of different types of people identify with the packaging. All different ages, which is surprising to me. I'm like, I thought like, rock and rollers or artists only, but like I get emails from moms that are like, thank you so much. Teaching the kids at home, having a puff of a joint really makes me a little bit more patient with my children, and which is great.
Yeah, shout out to moms. They need the support, right?
Yeah, totally. Go behind the house and go hide in the shed for a couple minutes. But I think trying to cover check every box with the packaging for inclusion, and we put our flag down a long time ago and made LGBTQ equal rights Washington boxes and donated some of the revenue to Equal Rights Washington.
That's awesome. Since we're on the topic, I just fast forwarded our deck a little bit so people could see the cool artwork while we're talking about it.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Larry, would you just so again, I think it's pretty amazing when you can create your own packaging, establish a brand, and then get to a place where you have packaging which is DIY. So in this case, you not only came out with two DIY packages, one black, one white, but then, correct me if I'm wrong, you actually had a contest where the best one was picked, and then you actually printed those up. Is that correct?
Yep, totally. Yeah, that was. We had an artist that made some amazing boxes, and we're like, "Hey, will you design this year's Pride Pack for us?" And they were like a bud tender at a local shop, so we knew each other, and it was like, "Yes, please do it." It turned out amazing.
That's awesome. We have a question from our audience. Sam Burton says the Saints branding is so cool. Was there a particular inspiration for the art style? Seems like it's working pretty well. And then I have another question too, after you answer that one. Are you converting any of your packaging into NFTs? Super interesting.
I say that's a lot to describe the brand to people. Like, I come from music and skateboarding and, old punk rock dude. Saints is a record label, but instead of music, there's weed on the inside. All the artists do record covers, they're all limited edition. They're all different variants. So some will have 1,000 of them will be green glitter on this side. People don't really know it, but I'm such I have a very short attention span when it comes to packaging and stuff. So I'm always just changing it up a little bit just to make it fun for even myself.
So it's born out of your need to not get bored.
Oh my gosh, totally. I get stressed out and why do I do this? And then, and then it stops and I do it again. NFTs, I'm learning about it. Honestly, I don't know a whole lot about it. In terms of you're selling limited edition images of the packaging. And then I kind of get lost to be completely honest. I heard it's really expensive to sell NFTs too. So at some point in time, some email me and explain it to me, and then yeah, totally.
That's right. Let's go out to dinner.
Yeah, I definitely am not an expert enough to explain or share what the process is like, but I do think we could do an episode just about NFTs and how they're related to cannabis. Maybe we'll add that to our episode list for the future.
Yeah, I'd love that.
There you go. NFT basics, so everybody gets on the same page. Understand what an NFT is.
Yeah, and ISA actually, I should mention, is getting really heavily involved in the space. My boss, Jacqueline Rosales, is doing all kinds of work with all these huge brands. So we'll definitely give you an update on that when we do our episode related to NFTs. It is a whole can of worms, definitely. Thanks for your comment, Sam.
I got a lot of art, so yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
The next obvious question, when is Saints coming out with its own cryptocurrency?
Mm-hmm.
Already done. It failed.
Yeah.
Because I did it.
Very cool. What else? Does anybody have any other questions for Larry? Well, we've got him held up here. Lots of good things.
We do have a question from Sam Ashburner. I haven't seen pre-rolled blunts in stores. Do you think the taboo of tobacco is the cause? That's interesting.
Pre-rolled blunts in stores. Yes, it's illegal to mix cannabis and tobacco, but they make hemp wraps, and we sell those. We sell those for special occasions. Like we're on 420, we're gonna make like 1,000 infused blunts in Washington.
Whoa, that sounds crazy. I'm so glad that this came up, because that was going to be my next question. Is with 420 coming up, are you planning anything? It sounds like you're doing a spectacular rollout. Anything else in the works you can share with us?
Yeah, I'm doing. We did a whole series of rising star artists from Oklahoma. So Oklahoma is getting their own art.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And that's coming out. That'll be out right around 420. And I just got images of some samples, and I love it. I love it so much.
So,
do you think that you'll start doing state-specific art?
Yeah,
is that
totally.
a direction?
Yeah, I think with each state we go in, we're going to be like, let's do collaborations with different state brands, like we do in Washington, and state artists exclusively.
I love that. What I love about it too is that it gives you that sense of like collect them all. Once you start getting a few, then I need the Oklahoma ones, or I need this other style. So there's a built-in reason to purchase them, not only for the product, but also for your sense of collectability.
I know when I lose one, I have a library, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I lost one. How could I have done that? Yeah.
So, and Larry, could you talk about for a moment, working at the local level, building a national brand, right, and jumping into state by state, but working with those local artists. I know you started early on with Jeremy Fish, Jimbo Phillips, a number of pretty well-known skate, street, graffiti artists that are internationally recognized. Then you've also worked into the tattoo community with some of that artwork. Can you talk about recognizing these communities and the artists within, and how you build on the local level as you build your national brand?
Yeah, I usually pick one person to curate it, where I'm very much involved in the entire process. But I always try to find an expert, like the tattoo box. We did 10 tattoo artists from Washington, and I had a very well-respected Washington tattoo artist really make the final decisions and really communicate with the tattoo artists. I think it brings legitimacy to the entire process. So it's not like some brand head that you hear from like once, you know. I'm always there for, you know, to answer questions or anything like that. But I think really, yeah, I get a lot of emails, so I like to make sure they all get answered, you know. And then the same with Oklahoma. We have a couple people out there that made recommendations, and then I have a kind of my social media guy that really kind of just made sure all of everything was collected from each artist, everything from their website to their Instagram handle to the stories. And because yeah, it's a lot of work that goes into this stuff.
Right, absolutely. Well, like you said, in many ways, you know, you said it's a record label. I used to own an art gallery, so I think of what you do as really running an art gallery. You're creating shows and you're launching products and you're marketing those products and you're promoting the artists and you're hoping the artists are promoting your product as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, Jen Holland also asked, what's next and where do you see your company taking cannabis product-wise?
I have, yeah, that's a hard question. I have a lot of jobs. I have after the Oklahoma series, I'm going to do we licensed our first IP, and it is going to be with two of the guys from Vice Media from Bong Appetit, and they have a podcast called Great Moments in Weed History. So we're doing moments in weed history. So a whole series of interactive boxes show important moments that shaped where we're at now.
I love that. Such a cool idea.
Yeah, totally. Dave's
Maybe
involved.
we could do a launch of CANNAfact Friday package.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, totally.
There you go. So that's interesting, Larry. As you know, I always talk about the 14 cannabis brand archetypes, and the 15th one now being spiritual. After spending lots of time with Swami and Nikki, but this is interesting because this is the first packaging and line of pre-rolls that talk about and celebrate people and moments in cannabis history. And that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, when the boxes line up, it's actually a timeline that will take you through initially 12 great moments in weed history.
Yep, it's beautiful. I'm so excited to see it all laid out. It's kind of like an encyclopedia set when it's all done. Like, you know, when we were kids, how they all lined up on the bindings. You know.
Yep. Yeah. That was very satisfying for sure.
Yeah, that's where my OCD first kicked in. But now that you know,
totally. And then we make book boxes, stash boxes, where they come with multiple joint boxes in a book. So you open up a book, there's joint boxes in there, and we are working with one of my favorite book publishers. I can't say because it's not 100% yet, but this is like, for me, like one of the exciting things. So the next year's busy.
Cool. We, you know, Larry, we have a question about coming to New Jersey. Any thoughts on moving east? Not moving east, but bringing your products east?
Yeah, I'm going to be at MJ Unpacked in May. So yeah, I'm going to be there with everything there, with the little you know, display and taking meetings about people that, you know, are interested in East Coast states opportunities.
Nice.
Yeah.
And for those that aren't familiar with that, that's MJ Unpacked. It's the first time it will be in New York, and that's May 18th and 19th. So that's coming up. Looking forward to that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam Ashburner, for your message about the Trenton Bridge. We'll have to check that out.
Absolutely. Cool. I know we've got some other things. Any other questions from the audience while we've got Larry here, or anything related to the Saints brand or pre-rolls in general? Right.
We have someone who's going to meet us in New York in May at MJ Unpacked.
Looking forward to that. We've got comedy night coming up too in Manhattan somewhere, right, Larry?
Yes. Comedy Cellar.
The Comedy Cellar. There you
Yeah.
go.
I love New York. I'm excited.
Me too. As a native New Yorker that's been living in Seattle for 15 years, I'm looking forward to going back and hanging out with some of my my long-time cannabis friends not from New York. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, Larry, just relative to what you just spoke about, when do you expect that new line of products to come in?
I'm going to say July.
July. Okay. And where will you be launching that? Just so everybody knows, is that where does that?
It's only going to be in Washington, and I'm ironing all that out right now. So right now it's just Washington,
Mm-hmm.
but I have a feeling it's going to make its way to other states for sure.
And so, just I know we'll start wrapping things up soon, but would you just give us a quick, not a timeline, but some of the moments, the great moments, or the people that you're celebrating, just to get a better understanding of what that timeline is and what you're doing.
Some of my favorite ones are they're all episode. They're mostly all episodes of their podcast. So yeah, I think it's a weekly podcast that comes out. And some of my favorite episodes are Surfers Invent Dabs.
That's a cool one.
Of dabs. And the first pot brownie, the first edibles. There is the first cannabis song, the first cannabis book reference in books. And what else is there? There is.
You must have 420 in there, right? The history of 420.
Yeah, 420's in there. Hempfest is in there. It's a huge, I'm sure everybody knows what Hempfest is. And then legalization, the day Washington went legal and Colorado went legal in the same day. And then more for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll have to bring you back on in the future and share some of your designs with us.
Anytime.
I'd love to see them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, awesome. Larry, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really fun. And thank you for breaking us in the topic we haven't covered before, pre-rolls.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And for those folks that are listening, be sure to check out saintsjoints.com, where not only you'll see all of Larry's products and packaging, but there's also apparel, there's other things there. And we didn't mention this before, just very quickly. There are people that actually buy your packages and buy your pre-rolls without any flour in it, so they could take their own flour and rock it out and be super stylish too, right?
Yep, we sell until our PayPal got shut down, and our Square got shut down, and but before all that happened, yeah, we would sell empty boxes with empty cones so people could make their own joint boxes, and we've sold them all over the world.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Larry, thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing what you're doing. It's pretty insightful. I think it's very creative, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys.
Right on. Thank you, Larry.
Okay.
All right. So if anybody is watching and they are not signed up for CANNAfact Friday to receive a weekly stat in your inbox and become a cannabis expert, sign up for CANNAfact Friday newsletter at isacorp.com/CANNAfact Friday sign up. And one more thing I should note, if you're interested in cannabis, if you're interested in cannabis branding, which I think everybody in this audience would qualify. Definitely check out David's book, Branding Bud, The Commercialization of Cannabis. It's available on Amazon and brandingbud.com.
Thank you, Adriana. And as Adriana just said, we're here every Friday, and we start at 10 a.m. PST and 1 p.m. EST. Next week, we'll be chatting with Kylie Halpern from Dose and Chill. Pretty excited about that, a fashionable vape pen. So we'll be focused on vaping next week and all things surrounding that. So again, every Friday, please feel free to join us where we meet with some of the industry's best minds and talk about some stats and put some context around it. And we'll do it every Friday. So thank God it's CANNAfact Friday. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. And if you have any episode ideas, drop us a note on LinkedIn and have an amazing weekend. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.